Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 6-game college basketball slate and an 8-game NBA slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Hope everybody did well yesterday. We did. We cashed in both sports and had some really good lineups, so hopefully we can continue that today. We've been doing really well lately, especially in college basketball. Now, this slate for college basketball isn't as good as it has been, but it's still a decent one, and so I do like it enough to play a decent amount. So let's go and get into it here. So we have 6 games on this slate. We'll do NBA after the college basketball here. We have Colorado versus Northern Colorado. Now Colorado is favored by 21 points in this one, 152-point total for Bradley and Cleveland State. This game is a 9.5-point total spread for Bradley, 141-point total. New Mexico State and New Mexico, 14 points in favor of New Mexico with 153 total. Fresno State and Cal State, Bakersfield. Fresno is favored by 9.5, 132.5-point total. Looking at Gonzaga and Connecticut, it's a -4 for Connecticut with 150-point total. And then San Diego and Portland State, where Portland State is favored by 2 and 152-point total. We do have 4 injuries to look at this point. First for Colorado, Williams is out. That will give a boost to Hammond. For Bradley and Cleveland, for Cleveland State, DeBrick is out, and that gives a boost to Aruna, excuse me. For New Mexico, Mashburn Jr. is questionable. That would give a boost to Washington and Dent. And then for San Diego, Lungu is out, and that is questionable, and that would give a boost to Turner if he doesn't play. So those are the injury situations today. We do have an interesting slate on this one. I do have one core play for you, and that is Dent for New Mexico. I will get through that here as I go through the teams. So we're just going to start with each game and kind of go through it. So for Cleveland and Bradley, there's not a ton in this game that's very likable, but there is one guy in Hannah. He's a great option on this slate. He's been pretty solid throughout the season. He's priced pretty fairly for his production. He'll get at least 20 to 25 fantasy points at minimum, and then if he can, considering Bradley's favored to win the game by 9 points, I think he'll have a good opportunity to play at least 25 or so minutes and have the potential for a 30 fantasy point game, which is what we need from him today. So he's definitely a decent play on the slate. Excuse me about that. Then you could also look at Inanara for Cleveland. Now he obviously gets a boost with Williams out, with DeBrick out, and he's played pretty solid throughout the season. Though he does have a lower floor than I like for the price point, and so he does carry some risk. And so does Hickman for Bradley. He does carry some risk as well, as he has a low floor for his price, but he definitely has some high upside potential in this game. Moving into the Northern Colorado game. Now, this is an interesting situation as this game is a 21-point favorite for Colorado. However, both these teams do not play very good defense. And so when we look at Northern Colorado, we have 3 plays that are high-risk GPP plays. And I'm just going to mention these guys real quick. And that is St. Thomas, Brock Winsney, and then Jaron Riley. All 3 of these guys have extreme risk, but they have a high floor and a high ceiling and a low floor. In certain situations, they do play pretty well. Now, they do have the advantage of the matchup, but it's still kind of risky, so do keep that in mind. But those guys are kind of a contrarian plays for GPP aspects and maybe even a team stack if you think Northern Colorado can put up enough points for these guys to pay off. Then we'll look at a good play for Colorado is KJ Simpson. I really like his potential today. He's had only a couple off games throughout the season. His price is a little high, but he's been doing well enough that he should get over 30 fantasy points in this one, assuming he can play enough minutes. That's really the big risk here, is if it gets out of hand early and he doesn't play enough minutes. But even in the wider matchups, he's gotten close to 30 fantasy points at the very minimum, and then a couple of those he's been over 35 as well. So he's a definite good play on the slate. We also like Hammond Jr. for Colorado if as a value play, though he does carry some risk as he is scoring dependent, but he's been pretty solid so far this season. He's a little pricey for his potential here, and he does have a low floor, but he's got the ceiling that's good enough to make him a viable option, but he definitely carries some mid-level risk here. We'll look at New Mexico and New Mexico State here. Now, New Mexico is favored to win this game by 14.5 points, and like I said, Mashburn is questionable in this one. But I do not know if he'll play or not. But I do like a few players from New Mexico in this one, so let's go ahead and look at them first. The best being Donovan Dent. He has played extremely well. He's priced very fairly. He's only had one off game on the season so far. I like his potential here. And at this price point, he doesn't need to score more than 30 fantasy points. He's been doing that quite a bit. He's averaging 35 fantasy points a game. And with them favored to win, I expect him to have a really solid game here. Then we're going to also look at JT Toppin. Now, he definitely carries some GPP risk here, as he does have a lower floor than I like for the price point, but he's played pretty good in certain situations, and this is a type of situation that he should play well in, and so I do like his upside here. And then if we look at True Washington, he does have some upside, but he is contingent on if Jamal Mashburn Jr. plays or not. If Mashburn doesn't play, he becomes a pretty good play. If he does play, that would give him some risk associated. Though he has played decently in the games that Mashburn has played, he does carry more risk if Mashburn does, in fact, play. So then we're going to look at New Mexico State, and much like Northern Colorado, New Mexico State has some super risky GPP plays here as well. They definitely all have high ceilings and low floors, with their upside being good. So I will mention those four players from this team that I do like, but they definitely carry risk. And with the game being, a 14-point spread, it's hard to really like them a lot, but they do have some upside. Femi Adukola is one, Jordan Rawls is one, Ezigu is one, and then Jackson Posey are the other. So those four guys, they definitely carry a ton of risk, but if you wanted to stack up New Mexico State because you think they can keep it close, then that would definitely be a way to do it. The ceiling in this game is pretty high at 153 total points, and so that definitely gives it some potential as well. Moving into the Connecticut Gonzaga game, this is going to be a game that I think a lot of people are going to try to factor in here. However, it's going to be somewhat difficult because these are the two best defensive teams on the slate, and of course they're playing each other. But it's also one of the tighter games at only a 4-point spread in UConn's favor. So I do actually like several players from UConn that does carry some risk, and I do think that this is kind of the way that you would want to go with this team, is to stack the three players that I've considered here. But they all carry a little bit of risk due to the matchup. But first being Tristan Newton. Now he's played well throughout the season, though he is extremely expensive and his floor is way lower than we'd like. But if you want to go with the UConn stack and you think they can hang a bunch on Gonzaga, which they are capable of doing, and he's played well in some of their tougher games this season, like against Kansas where he scored 45 fantasy points, then he's definitely somebody that you should roster. Cam Spencer is also in play. He's also been high risk, high reward, but he definitely has that super high ceiling. And he did very well against North Carolina. And he's also done good early in the season against some of the tougher teams as well. So I think he's definitely worth a look. And his price is pretty good here, actually, for his potential, though he does have that lower floor. And then we do have a value play for Connecticut as well in Solomon Bell. He is a very high risk, high reward today, but he definitely draws some potential. He's not a must play, or even this, if you don't want to throw him into the stack, then you don't have to. But he's definitely risky on the slate, but he definitely has some potential as a value play. And if you want to get more from this game, then he's definitely a way to go about it. Uh, then we're going to look at Gonzaga. We really don't like much from Gonzaga, unless you think that they can beat UConn, which I don't think they can. I think the spread is in UConn's favor for a reason, and honestly surprised it wasn't a few more points than that. As good as UConn has played this season. Also, both these teams are good defensively, and I felt like Gonzaga is overpriced today, so I'm pretty much avoiding them for the most part. Looking at uh, CSBK and Fresno here. We have a couple good players from this game. This game does carry some risk, as it is a kind of a strange game. It does have a 9.5 point favorite for Fresno, and I don't like the total at 132 points. That's very low for the slate. In fact, it's the lowest one on the slate by almost 10 points. So it's definitely a relatively avoidable game, but we do have a few guys that are interesting. One being Higgins for Bakersfield. Now he's their best player, and he's been pretty solid in most of their games. The only bad game that he's really had was against Tarleton, where they just absolutely didn't do anything. Only scored 40 points as a team. But every other game he's been pretty solid, and he should play plenty minutes in this one, regardless of the outcome of the game, and so he definitely draws some potential at this price point, as it is pretty fair. But he's really the only guy that has some really good upside in this matchup when it comes to being a decent play. Looking at Fresno, though, we do have three players that we could look at if you want to stack Fresno up. One would be Isaiah Hill. He's got a high risk, high reward kind of situation with his price point. We also like Leo Colomario for them. He definitely carries high risk, high reward as well, as he is extremely low floor. And then Bioki is kind of a decent value play, though he hasn't played a ton of minutes, a lot of games. He definitely draws some potential as he's played solid. However, he has a few floor games as well. So they are all GPP plays for Fresno, but they definitely have some potential. Then we're going to look at the last game on the slate in Portland State and San Diego. Now, this game is actually the tightest game on the slate at just a 2-point spread, and this actually does give us some potential players today, especially in the value slots, because this game does have a pretty good total of points at 152 as well. And it seems like San Diego is underpriced. Really, both these teams are a little bit underpriced, so they definitely have some potential there. We'll look at Portland State first. Now, it's hard to find a lot to like from Portland State, as they are a little bit expensive today. But Hayden Curtis has played over 23 minutes in the last two games, and he's had two monster outputs as a result. I don't know that he's going to continue to play those minutes, as he's not played very many minutes before that. So he definitely carries a lot of risk due to those minutes. But he's definitely in play if it looks like he's going to get those type of minutes again. Looking at Kendall Munson for them as well. He's also played pretty consistent minutes throughout the season. He definitely carries some risk, but he has a pretty stable floor for the minutes he's playing, and he does get enough rebounds and stuff to pay off on the slate, as he's only $3,700, but he is an extremely risky play. Looking at San Diego, we're going to be full of risky plays here. Now, San Diego does have a questionable tag in Lagunu, and if he misses, then that would definitely give McKinney and Turner some upside. They both are in play on the slate with lower floors than we'd like at their price points, but they're cheap enough that they're definitely a viable option on the slate. And this is where we get really interesting with the potential plays here. We have Kevin Patton Jr. For San Diego. Now, he is only $4,400, and he's had a lot of good games this season. For some reason, DraftKings doesn't have the last 3 or 4 games for him. Now, his fantasy output has dropped off a little bit since then, but he's still in play at this fantasy point upside potential here. Similar is Ola Dukin Jr. He is also in a similar situation. Now, he didn't play one game, but he's been back, and he's still playing pretty good. He's actually a pretty good option on the slate, as his minutes have increased lately. Again, much like Patton, his last few games are not showing up on DraftKings for some reason, but it does look like he should be good to go here, so he's definitely somebody to consider. And then Steven Jamerson is also an extreme option. Similar to those guys, he hadn't played but the last couple of games, and his minutes are slowly increasing. I don't know if he's going to get more and more minutes, but we'll have to wait and see about that. But he should have some potential opportunity in this one, especially in a tighter game, hopefully to score some fantasy points. And he doesn't need a lot to pay off at this price point. So obviously this slate is kind of wonkadoodle, but it's definitely capable of some big scoring game options. And so I do like it a decent amount. So I do think it's a decent play. Looking over at the NBA, we have a ton of injuries as per usual. We actually have quite a few players that are in pretty good spots. The only question today is going to be is not having a ton of value, at least not yet, because so many questionable tags. But let's go and get into the injury report. For the Pistons, Duren and Bagley are out. For the 76ers, they're at full strength. The Pacers and Wizards play each other. For the Pacers, Smith is still out and Nimhard is still out. For the Wizards, Poole is questionable, and then Wright and Schmidt are out. You could definitely find some value if Poole does get ruled out. For the Pelicans and Hornets game, for the Pelicans, Zion is questionable again. Ryan and Nance are out. If Zion misses, that would definitely open up some stuff. And for the Hornets, Washington is questionable. Ball is out and Williams is doubtful. If Washington was to miss, that could open up some mid-range value. For the Lakers and the Spurs game, the Lakers, Davis, LeBron, and Prince are questionable, and Vincent is out. If any of those guys miss, then that would definitely give it some upside to some other options, and that would even give a boost to some Spurs players. And for the Spurs, nobody is hurt today, so they're pretty much at full strength. For the Magic Celtics game, for the Magic, Fultz is actually questionable today, and Carter Jr. is out. And for the Celtics, Brown and Porzingis and Cornette are questionable, and Horford is doubtful. If Brown and Porzingis miss, that would give a lot of upside to some other players. So we'll have to wait and see about that. For the Hawks, Hunter is questionable, and Johnson is out. And for the Raptors, they are at full strength. That game definitely has some potential in it, as it should be a high-scoring game. For the Rockets and Grizzlies game, for the Rockets, Thompson remains questionable. And for the Grizzlies, Bane is questionable, and Smart and Kennard are out. Obviously, if Bane were to miss, that would get some upside to some other options. Looking at the Knicks Suns game, for the Knicks, Robinson remains out, and for the Suns, Allen and Gordon are questionable, and Okiogi are out. But it looks like Beal, Durant, and Booker should be good to go. So we have an interesting slate here. So we're just going to go through my favorite plays of the slate. Kind of an interesting slate from that perspective. We're going to start with Miles Turner, who is a core play. He's been very good lately. Now this game has a lot of high upside because it's a faster paced game, and he's played well in these kind of games this season. I expect him to play well in this one. And he's got a lot of upside as a result, but his price is pretty good. His minutes have been inconsistent throughout the season, but right now he's playing more, and he's had quite a few good games in the last 10 or so games. So I think he's definitely viable. Though he's a little pricey, he's still in a great slate option, so he's definitely in play today. Looking at Joel Embiid, obviously he was very close to being a core play for me, as he's played extremely well throughout the season and lately. Uh, and he faces just a really good matchup where he just dominated for 67 fantasy points last game out. I look for him to have another opportunity to have a big game like that, and he's been over 60 fantasy points in quite a few games in a row now. So he's only had a couple off games against tougher opponents, but I like his potential in this one, and so he's definitely in play. Anthony Davis is in play today if he plays. He is questionable right now, but he had a really good game against the Spurs last game out with LeBron out. If LeBron were to miss today, he would also get a boost as well. Then we'll look at Wembyama. He has really seemed to get it together for the last few weeks, and he's playing very well right now. His price is still under 10,000, which I kind of expected it to rise up even higher than 9,000 today based on the production lately, but he definitely carries that low floor, but he's been playing very well, and he's getting a lot of fantasy points from some blocks and stuff as well, so that definitely boosts his potential, especially in a game against the Lakers, who turned them over a lot. Siakam also in play for the Raptors. I think Toronto is going to be a popular stack again. They were popular the other day against Atlanta, and they played very well in the high-scoring game there. I expect a similar type of game, and Siakam's still just a little bit too cheap for this potential here. I do like Podol a little bit today as well for Toronto. Now, he's been up and down throughout the season, but these matchups where they have fast-paced, high-scoring potential, he's played pretty well in these type of games so far this year. In the game against Atlanta last time, he scored 47 fantasy points. I do expect some regression, but he's definitely capable of a double-double in this one. Trae Young, looks like a great option in this game. These two teams have played last game and both put up 128 and 135 points. I expect him to have another monster game as a result. He's been playing pretty well throughout the season and has nice upside in this matchup, and so he's definitely in play. He's been good in pretty much any game where he's played against a weaker defense. He's been pouring in the fantasy points. Schroeder also in play for Toronto. He played very well against Atlanta last game. He's played up and down throughout the season, but in these plus matchups, he's done well, and I do like his potential. His price point is still pretty good. I wish it was right around 6,000. I wish it was a couple $100 cheaper, but it's definitely in play in the slate. Halliburton has been an absolute superstar throughout the season. He's had a couple tougher games recently, but this matchup is just too hard to ignore, as Washington plays no defense whatsoever, and he scored 47 fantasy points last time against them. I expect a better game in this one, as it should stay close, and he should have a lot of upside in this matchup. Then we're going to look at Valanciunas for Pelicans. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. He's played very well lately, though this is contingent if Zion misses again. He tends to be good when Zion misses and he gets a lot of minutes. This also a great matchup against the Hornets, who aren't really playing much defense. And so he's definitely an interesting play, and his price is still pretty solid. Keldon Johnson has been playing up and down throughout the year, but he's playing good right now, and he's had 4 straight games over 30 fantasy points, and he gets a really nice plus matchup here against the Lakers. Whether LeBron plays or not, he definitely has some potential in this matchup, and he's been really good in the games and situations like this, so I definitely like his upside here, especially as he's the number 2 option behind Wemby. Looking at OG Anunoby, he's played very well, but inconsistent throughout the season. Uh, he has a high ceiling and a low floor. That said, this matchup carried a very high total last game, and it carries a high total again this time around. And I expect him to have a potential to do it again, but he definitely feels a little bit uh, trappy from that perspective. Looking at Clint Capella, he hadn't played as many minutes as he is right now early in the season, but right now he's playing 28 plus minutes a game. And while he's doing that, he's been at 30 fantasy points every single time about. And so he definitely draws some good potential in this game for that, as it should be a higher scoring game. And he played well in the last one as included. Julius Randle has really played well lately. And I like him in streaky situations, but he's really gotten a nice boost with Mitchell Robinson out. His usage and rebounds have gone up a little bit, so his potential here for scoring is also going up. He's playing a lot of minutes too, and he's getting a lot of peripheral stats which are boosting his fantasy potential. He's still just too cheap for that potential in this matchup. Then we'll look at Terry Rozier, who's been on an absolute tear with ball out, and I expect that to continue here. His price is no longer super cheap, but it's definitely playable in the slate against the Pelicans, whose defense is a little bit shaky. He's definitely somebody I like a lot. Jabari Smith is also in play for Houston. Now, he's really been consistent lately, despite the fact that his team has been all over the place. Um, they don't always score a ton of points, but he seems like he's been getting close to a double double in most games. And if he can get a double double here, he'll definitely pay off. Then we'll look at Gordon Hayward for the Hornets. Now, he definitely carries some risk, but if PJ Washington was to miss, he would get a little bit of a boost. He's played pretty well with ball out, and he's definitely increased his potential. So I think Rozier and Hayward is a good stack today if uh, if if you like them at all. And then CJ McCollum, now he definitely has a good matchup here against Charlotte. He's played pretty well since back from injury. He's only had one off game, and otherwise his price has been a little bit too cheap here, so I do like his upside in this matchup. So with that said, guys, we have a pretty interesting slate. Obviously, hopefully we can get some value plays to open up with some of these injury question marks. But overall, right now, it's a pretty interesting slate. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.